When people talk about the cop culture, they refer to the secrecy in which the police do their work, their habits, attitudes, beliefs, and vices that they also have just like many other people. How they cover each other when one's breaking the law, and how they try to cover up things they screw up without being held accountable. Newburn in 2008 argues that the existence of discretion in the police work is related to the corrupt behavior of some within the police force. Although not all police officers can be described as unethical, studies show that a large part of the police force indulge this so-called cop culture, bending the rules in their favor. Also, it is worth noting that some of those police officers which join the force with the idea that they will do good are sometimes simply absorbed into this vicious circle without being able to escape. In his book Justice Without Trial, Jaron Skolnick tried to give examples of what police officers would do in certain situations, not to argue that all police officers are the same, but that there are some bad apples in every organization. Using the concept of working personality, he stated that there are certain distinctive cognitive tendencies in police as occupational grouping. He observed a number of officers from a police department which were accused of using the services of different prostitutes. During the trial, Skolnick asked them why they acted in the way they did in relation to their beliefs about their role in the justice process. He states that their role has to comply with the community needs, which in this case wanted the streets cleaned up. But he also reveals that the officers did not have a problem with the women themselves, but see them as pawns in a chess game in which they are on opposite sides. An obstacle that strengthened the force of the police culture is that full implementation of law is impossible, and as a result, police officers have the responsibility to decide who is arrested, stopped, or questioned, which can lead to a phenomenon called justice without trial, as Skolnick argued in 1966. Those police officers taking the law into their own hands, deciding who will become the criminal, also decide who is the innocent. Rayner argues that cop culture is not all-powerful, but it reflects the power within the social structure it policies, and that is based upon danger, authority, and the need to produce results. Other researchers, as John Van Manen, criticized the cop culture without trying to find an excuse, portraying the police as abusing their power without having an excuse in order to do so. He argues that only their frustration of lacking the real police work is to blame for the apparition of labels such as suspicion persons, assholes, and knowing nothing. The officers that he observed had fixed and permanent asshole groupings, which included the young, the black, the militant, and the homosexual, and the other outsiders, which they decided that if they are not with the police, then they are against the police. The whole cop culture can be split in other subcultures, for example the racist culture and the sexist culture. In the case of racial bias shown by officers, the cases that have the most consequences are those of a high profile, such as the murder of Stephen Lawrence in the United Kingdom. In this case, investigators neglected their duties regarding initial actions, inquiries, and follow-up investigations, which eventually led to an unsatisfactory result. This result was to blame upon organizational failures of the police towards outlaw racism. However, these high-profile cases are not happening every day, but what's happening every day, and is a strong reinforce for the idea that cop culture is race biased, are the stop and searches recorded against black and ethnic minorities. According to the UK government, in the financial year 2017 and 2018, these minorities were 9.5 times more likely of being stopped and searched, a slightly higher rate than the previous year, which increased the likelihood of being imprisoned for those who were part of these communities. As previously said, some cop cultures can have their roots in the common negative attitudes of the officers toward minorities, but there are some cultures that are based on negative attitudes towards some of their own, specifically women. Sexist cultures describe officers as seeing the men more capable of dealing with the kind than women because, in their opinion, female officers lack the necessary meaning of exercising authority and force, which is the main symbol for power. This has been evidenced between the 1950s and 1980s, when most studies were about police as men and men as police, where female officers would be named only in real high-profile cases, which later have been engraved in history. According to numerous scientists such as Van Manen in 1978 and Wes Marland in 2001, there is a main theme that covers sexist cultures, particularly the attitude of "on the streets we can lose or we're finished," closely tying the reduction of crime with the amount of authority presented by the police. Although some might say that more women officers could lead to safer communities, explicitly because women police officers do not use the same force as men do, having greater success in de-escalating conflicts. But in the end, there is still hope, as Shannon Dixon in 2007 presented the idea that this culture can be reformed. They suggested that the old-fashioned way of having the Police Integrity Commission or PCI to investigate misconduct and corruption is flawed, having too many cases to go through. Instead, they argued that change would come with the change of the recruiting process, increasing the requirements for people who want to join the force, having more recruits from a new professional training program which would be the equivalent of a university-level recruit. Also, recruiting straight from university would lead to a generational change which would later bring a cultural change as well by bringing into the game a higher sense of morality.